Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Post Military Podcast, where we share stories of veterans' transition out of the military and their advice to other service members based on their life experience. Whether you are still in service, a veteran, or just someone preparing to transition into a new chapter of your life, there is something here for you to learn. I've included timestamps in the description of the episode, so head down there to see if there are any topics that are of particular interest to you. Also, while you're poking around, subscribing to the channel or podcast on your favorite platform is always greatly appreciated. Anyway, thank you so much for being here today, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Post Military Podcast, the podcast where we give you information and stories on transitioning from one chapter of your life to the next, specifically focused on the military transition. With me today is someone who, if you're on LinkedIn, you've definitely seen him before. He has been in multiple nonprofits assisting veterans and military spouses with their transition. And before you ever knew him on LinkedIn, he served for 23 years, 8 months, and a couple of days in the U.S. Marine Corps, retired as a Master Sergeant in Communications. And that person with me today is Bruce Thompson. Bruce, thanks so much for coming on.
Nah, Bill, it's my pleasure. Glad to be able to come in here and just tell my story. So hopefully others don't go through the same struggles that I have.
Let's hope so. And with that, let's jump right into it. Tell everyone a little bit about your military background and then what led to you starting your military transition.
Of course, like everyone, I signed a contract. I was doing 4 years and I was running away. Next thing you know, it's almost 24 years later and it's like, oh, I guess it's my time. The transition process, it actually took me a little bit by surprise. I was doing 30. Once I made that commitment, I was going to 30, but injuries caught up to me. Once you get to the point where you physically cannot do the minimum standards of what the Marine Corps requires, you don't get to stick around just because you're not ready. As the surgeries started stacking up, it was that, okay, my time's come. Got to get out of the way so the next generation of Marine leaders can take the lead and go forth and do amazing things. So I started looking, what transition programs am I going to go to? What do I want to do? As they say, what do you want to do when you grow up? I'll tell people I still don't know that answer, but I'm never growing up, so it's okay. But you start going through that process. And for me, it was like a double whammy. I'd been the sports guy since I was like 8 years old. And then I've been a Marine my entire adult life. And all of a sudden, at the same time, both of those identities were being stripped away from me. So we talk about not only the immediate change of going from active duty Marine and that lifestyle and that camaraderie and just the way we do everything being over and done with. And then the flip side of, I'm not the guy who's going to be at the gym playing basketball or running, going out and doing mud runs or 5Ks or 10Ks or pick up sports or anything. It's like, whoa, that's who I am. Like, what do you mean I'm not going to be doing that? So I went to a lot of different transition programs. I went to the DoD mandated transition assistance program, the wonderful TAP. I went to it twice. I never completed the program. Both times it pissed me off to the point of, I just got up and left. And a lot of that, I think a lot of people have that same response to it. And it's because we don't understand what TAP really is for. TAP is to teach us all those things that we need to learn about, but there's no way to teach us that in 5 days. So I joke and say it's like College 100. You go to this college introductory class and tells you, hey, in order to be successful and graduate, you have to do X, Y, and Z. You don't do X, Y, and Z in that same workshop. You pick all your classes. You work with the career counselor, your student success center, and on top of going to all the classes you need to earn your degree. We don't get that training. We get so many people said, you go to TAP and you'll be fine. and all of a sudden you go to tap and you're like, oh, I'm not fine. Like they're speaking languages I don't know. Like I didn't write my first resume until I was 42 years old. And let me tell you, I hate resumes. A resume is you trying to fit into someone else's box. And I don't fit in other people's boxes very well. I love being me. As you can see, I've got the Batman stuff in the background. That is my alter ego. So it's hard to say, hey, I want you to fit in this box. So as I was going through, I was finishing up getting my medical taken care of. And I was having surgeries and medical procedures all the way up until the end of my time on active duty. Instead of taking terminal leave, I was actually on convalescent leave, recovering from surgeries. So that was a completely different thought process and change that a lot of people, and I'll be honest, my command, they didn't really realize that I was still having surgeries. They were like, oh, it's the master sergeant. He's just going to do what he's doing. He's retiring. And people were like calling me, why are you still in our roles? I'm like, I just had surgery like last week. Like, I don't fall off your roles for another 3 months, but I just have surgery after surgery, procedure after procedure lined up. And people were, that's weird. But he's a master sergeant, so we're just going to let him do whatever master sergeants do, and we'll just shoo him away. And so my focus when I got out was getting my health straight, getting my health taken care of, and trying to be as healthy as I could be. So that whole career search and all, that was like backseat. That was like an afterthought for me. But one thing that, even though the transition came up as a surprise, me and my wife did have the kid-free, debt-free plan. We were able to meet that. Being empty nesters, not having any bills really gave us a lot of financial freedom to not have to stress about, oh, I have to go get a job. When she had a job, was doing well, my retirement plus 100% permanent total disabled veteran, that gave us some freedom. So I didn't have to rush into the job. Now with that, I didn't have to. There I was 2 weeks away from being unemployed for the first time in my adult life. And you're like, oh, this isn't good. What am I going to do? And some of that stress starts coming in. I'm on I-5, bumper to bumper traffic there in San Diego. And I had a military headhunter call me up, said, I got a perfect job for you. And like true Marine I was, I'm in traffic, I'm busy, email it to me. If I'm interested, I'll let you know in the morning. Click. You know, he called me back. He's like, this is a 6-figure job. Like, why are you hanging up on me? I'm like, bro, email me. If I'm interested, I'll call you back in the morning. Click. I looked at it. It was everything I did in service, also known as everything I did not want to do when I got out of the Marine Corps. But it was 6 figures. It was doing something I was very good at. 8 miles from my house, which if you're in Southern California, that is, amazing. I took the interview. From the time I got that first phone call to the time I started that job was less than 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So when companies are ready to hire, they're ready to hire. It was the easiest job I ever had in my life. I had no idea why they were paying so much money. It was just one of those ones that most people have said, hey, success was reached right away. And I had no passion or purpose for this job. I left after 4 weeks. Just can't do this. Amazing company, great boss, peers, employees. Again, it wasn't a hard job, but it was manufacturing. And as you said, I did comm in the military. So a lot of behind closed doors, not knowing if it was daytime, nighttime, sunshine, rain. It's the same thing in manufacturing. And it was like, yeah, I'm not down with this. This is not Bruce. This is not something that I'm going to thrive at. This is not something that's healthy for me. And of course, having served for almost 24 years, I had to get permission from my wife to leave. Because we didn't leave. That wasn't what we did. We signed up for a job, we went to work, and we stayed there. And there's units in the military that we absolutely loved and wish we never left. And there's units we couldn't wait to leave. But you showed up to work and you did what you're supposed to do until it was time to move on. So that was like a weird concept. And for a lot of us, we sign a military contract and we go where Uncle Sam tells us to go. We do what they tell us to do. And whether we like it or not, we just put forth the best effort we possibly can. That was that weirdness. Now, I will tell you, I was headhunted for a better job off LinkedIn 3 weeks into that first job. So when I left that first job, it was for the second job. So again, I'm the guy that everybody talks about, no effort whatsoever, and walked into not one but two six-figure jobs back to back within the first 6 weeks of, well, heck, honestly, within the first 3 weeks of being retired. If you set yourself up right, you get your school, you get your certifications, you get your backdrop, all of that will work. And again, I'm a firm believer in the power of LinkedIn. I got onto it early. I built my network before I needed it. I was engaging. I was talking with people, and I was found for opportunities. So it's definitely a great thing. But those are, some of those things you had. Now, of course, the flip side is that second job was contracting. So I worked it off and on for 9 months before we didn't win the contracts, and I went poof, and the famous, hey, we'll give you a call if something comes up. 7 years ago, they've never called me. So we can take that with a grain of salt with how things were. But that was my first 60 days out. 2 high-paying jobs, nice job titles, everything that people said success was. And I learned really quickly that success for me wasn't a high-paying job with a great title. It was trying to figure out purpose and passion. And this is where the story gets a little dark, because it took me almost a year to figure out where my purpose and passion was. And during that first year, I was really miserable. I don't know how my wife put up with me. I wasn't happy. I wasn't engaging. I wasn't doing things. At one point, I didn't leave the house for over 2 months. And when I say didn't leave the house, I walked from my front door directly across the street to the mailbox and back. That was leaving my house. I'd get up in the morning and I'd come downstairs and sit on the couch, and me and my pup would watch TV and take naps. And neither would come home from work with, did you move? And I was like, I went to the bathroom. I got a drink. Of course I did. She's like, no. So my anxiety, my depression, the PTSD, the nanosecond fuse, all of that was just eating away at me. And I had waved the flag and said, I'm good. I don't need to do any of this. And like a good Marine spouse, she said, the hell with this. You're not going to sit here and waste away. You're going to get up off your butt, get out the house and go do something. And those were her directions. Get out of the house and do something. So for the next 2 weeks, I got up 2-3 days a week. I got out of the house. I went golfing. Showed up the golf course. I put my earbuds in. Sometimes there was music. Sometimes there wasn't. I walked in. I signed for a cart because I was too broken to walk the executive par 3 course. And I'd play 1836 holes and talk to absolutely no one. I'd come home. I'd shower. I'd sit back on the couch, watch TV, and take naps with the dog. After the end of that second week, Neither was like, hey, who are you golfing with? No one. And she's, whoa. So no, you said, get out of the house and do something. I did both of those things. So she's like, all right, Marine, details. You need to go out and people. I was like, whoa, I don't people. She said, yes, you do. I said, no, I don't like people. She said, yes, you do. I said, no, I don't. She said, you do. I said, well, maybe I do. So that got me going out. I applied for 3 new positions, all 3 in the military transition space. One of my Marines referred me to it. So that was basically my job. I just had to go through the hiring process. But I'd already talked to the hiring manager, the supervisor. They were already scheduling me for training for when I was going to go to train the trainer courses. So that was mine. A second one was between me and one other retiree. We both knew each other, and we both knew the guys that were going to be interviewing us. That was going to be a flip of the coin on interview day, who did the best. And then I applied to be a TAP facilitator, because why not be able to go back and teach people what I wish someone would have taught me? And like everything, you just barely get off the couch. I'd taken that 8 count. I was getting up, and federal hiring freeze of 2017 comes along and takes those first 2 jobs away and just punches me in the gut, and I'm right back down. I honestly forgot that I applied for that 3rd job to be a TAP facilitator. So when they called me out of the blue and started asking me questions, I was trying to figure out who they were and why they were talking to me. Luckily, I jogged my mind within a couple of minutes. Had a great interview, led to the second interview, led to the offer and the acceptance. And for the next 2 years, I taught TAP in Southern California and throughout the Southeast region of the U.S. I absolutely loved it. It was about teaching people how to be successful and not finding jobs, but how to figure out what success was, because it's an individual thing for all of us. Your version of success will look different than mine, which will look different to a third or a fourth person. You're not saying success is you going out and finding a high-paying job with a great job title. Some of us get out and we want to live that hustle life. Others of us are just content to have a nice job and work on that, more time with the family. Some of us are happy to go start our own business, to find this or that and that. And that's what we have to get across to people is there is no one definition of military transition success. And I said, I taught it for 2 years. I got to teach people about resources, information I wish someone would have taught me. Heck, I learned that there's over 45,000 different organizations out there that are all about helping us with the transition process. Those are things that I didn't know. And no one knows all of them because every day they fluctuate. With some go away, some get started, some are on the rise, some are on the decline. But going back out and figuring out which ones work for you is that magic that needs to happen. And I tell people all the time, I went to one in San Diego, it's a nonprofit that taught me what it meant to transition. I've had other people go into that nonprofit and said, we didn't really like it. I'm like, okay, it's just because it worked for me doesn't mean it worked for you. Here's 10 other options. Find the one that does work for you. And those are the things that I really love when we get to talk about it. And heck, I'll tell you, I'm that guy that we moved from San Diego, California to Jacksonville, Florida without having ever been here before in our lives and without knowing a single soul. We just said, hey, picked it on the map, we're going. We got here and it's coming up on 7 years soon and absolutely love it. Now the joke is I run the Jacksonville Mafia, which is all of the military veteran, military spouse advocacy, all the nonprofits that are all about collaborating to help each other grow and be better. And of course, like anything we talk about, you don't even know if you're in the Mafia. So it's just been an amazing journey, and we find our place. And if you would have asked me 7 years ago when I retired, hey, what do you see yourself in 5-10 years? Man, the answer would have been corporate America, wearing a suit and tie, doing something in management. And let me tell you, Billy, I have not seen corporate America. I've driven by it a few times. I get some friends that are in it. I'm like, yeah, good for you, but that's not for me. I wore the suit and tie for the first 2.5-3 years. And it's comfortable. I have no problem throwing a suit on. But, man, I get to do what I love to do. The job I'm at now with the Ascend Collective and Talents Ascend, the CEO and founder, when we were talking, and I was talking to her about a different role. And as we were talking, she said, before you go any further with that one, what do you think about coming and being Bruce for me? I'm like, I fit that job description. I think that would be a good thing. Let's go down this conversation. Let's talk about it. And here I am, again, working with another nonprofit, Talents Ascend. We're the future of hiring. No resumes, no job searching, no applications. It's an AI-powered, skills-based employment matching platform. Candidates create a profile and tell us who they are and what they want to do, and up to 25 skills they have. Absolutely free, no charge, no commitment for them whatsoever. So it's not writing a resume to fit in someone else's box. It's no, this is who I am. And then it goes into our database, and companies sign up for a flat rate membership fee and post opportunities, but they don't use a vacancy announcement. It's about skills-based matching. It's one of those wonderful things where we talk skills. We don't talk about how flowery can you write a resume. We don't talk about oh, you have date gaps, so you're going to be eliminated. No, we get rid of all that. We just talk straight up. Do you have the skills in the location and negotiable salary range to match with this company? If so, they get matched together and they have the conversation. So it's a beautiful thing. I tell everybody we're talents with an S, ascend.com. Absolutely free. Definitely reach out, check us out, and you got nothing to lose. Do your traditional job search with us, and we're available for anyone who's legally authorized to work in America. So again, give it a look. We're all over the of our website with LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. We believe in social media. It's how we get information out there, and we hit all the different pockets of individuals and who we have and what we have going on.
It's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story and giving everybody like that. There's so much to dive into with that with the story. And the first place that I want to take this conversation to is I want to go back to when right before you got out. Did you know, like, did someone just spring on you like, "Hey Bruce, you're getting medically retired," or was that a process that you initiated?
I did not get medically retired. I retired, regular retirement, but it was one of those ones where as the surgeries added up, and I had 14 surgeries on active duty. Uh, and then I had 3 that we ran out of time for that I had as soon as I got into the VA system. But seeing that and knowing it, I came out and said, hey, I can't just keep sitting here and taking up someone's spot. I can't run. I can't do deployments. I can't be the leader that the Marine Corps needs. So that was me saying, okay, this is it. This is submitting my retirement paperwork. I'm taking the next 12 months to get my medical straight, out process. And that's where it was. Again, being a master sergeant, maintenance side, not too many people were asking a million questions about where's the master sergeant at. Equipment was working, our readiness levels were good. My shop we had Marines of the quarter, we had NCOs of the quarter. We were setting the bar for everything. So I was really left alone. So yeah, I probably could have hidden and stayed longer, but it's not what the Marines are about. So if you couldn't do the job anymore, it was time to get out the way. So that's how that all happened. So I initiated the retirement paperwork. I initiated my timeline to leave. And again, it was how much can we get done before it's time?
First, I want to say that's powerful. I think that everyone who's in the military knows one person who probably objectively should hang up the cleats, for lack of a better term, but don't, for reasons that I think are you can empathize with, which are you don't know what you want to be when you grow up. The concept of transition is scary. You talked about it. You go to TAP and you leave with more questions than you had before, and you certainly don't have very many answers. And so I think people try and stay to avoid all of that uncertainty. And so what do you think you had in that moment that equipped you to make that leap, regardless of all of those unknowns that were out there? And clearly you had conviction, and I love the talking about how someone could be a more effective leader in my shoes than me because of my current status and all that. But what do you think you had that allowed you to make that courageous leap into the next thing when, like you said, you could have hidden?
I always preach the good of the Marine Corps. Marine Corps with our brother and sisterhood and the way that we train, and it's always about the next person up, the understanding what role you fit. And if you're not meeting the mark, that doesn't look good for you, for anyone else. I wasn't going to sit there and just, for lack of a better term, I was going to say, steal someone else's air, steal someone's space. And we just have that for good of the Corps. If you can't be out front and lead by example, it's time to go. And And I had great mentors and people that I always asked the question, hey, when do you know it's your time to go? And of course, everybody always says, when it's your time, you'll know. And you're like, no, but really, you give me an answer. And then you're like, when it was my time, it was like, oh, I know. And so I had it. And yeah, it's scary not knowing what's going on. But at the same time, because I couldn't be out front, I couldn't be that leader I'd been for 23 years. I couldn't do not only the basic things, but the things that put me out and got me to where I was. That wasn't a good feeling. So it was very hard to go through and talking about my mental health struggles, talking about my physical health struggles, just spiraling a little bit with all those things that I've been able to do my entire life. I'm physically not able to do them. And all that together was just, I can't stay here. I have to make that change. It's time to move on. So yes, there's always people that will stay longer. There's people who tell you I stayed longer than I should have. But we have to make those decisions that are right for us, for the service. And I think I addressed mine and stepped aside in a timely manner. People like, you took a year when you submitted your retirement paper, you submitted it for a year out. That was me taking care of me. I wasn't going to give myself a 3 or 4 month window because there's just no way you could have done that. That was the letting everybody know, hey, I'm leaving. So that means you need to promote another master sergeant, 2 gunnies, 3, 4 staff sergeants, and seeing how that whole pyramid of promotions worked. I gave everybody that notice so we could get more people slated. We made sure people had time to be my replacement on a timely manner. I was still filling 4 different seats when I left, so it wasn't like I just magically said, yeah, I'm out, peace, and walked away. It was that training and turning over with people, because my replacement didn't show up until after I'd already left. And I was filling the maintenance officer, the maintenance chief role. So it was okay, I've got to train you to do this role, you to do that role, and who else can I piecemeal it out to? And making sure those things were lined up, making sure that the leadership of the unit understood that, hey, these people might not have the rank, but they had the abilities, they had the knowledge. So setting people up for success. At the same time, while you're trying to do all that, you're trying to do the best thing you can for you and your family to make your transition possible, ready. And it's not hard because we don't know. We don't know. From the time I signed my contract when I was 17, I shipped to boot camp at 18 years in a month. And I ran that all the way until I was 42 years old. So all of a sudden, 42, all I'd ever known was being a Marine. And all of a sudden, you're like, you're not an active duty Marine anymore. You're like, ooh, what's this going to be? When you take that, you come off for the last time, you're like, huh. It's the next day, and you're, what do I do? And that was a weird feeling. And again, I was still going through medical after my ceremony. I was still on the books because I was still having surgeries and everything else. But I wasn't putting the uniform on anymore. So that was that. What is my new routine? What am I going to get up and do? Where do I belong? And again, I consider myself very lucky that I found some amazing mentors, some amazing nonprofits that really connected with me and took me under the wing and were like, hey, this is where you were. Like that first time I told you I was 42 years old when I wrote my first resume. Man, I was at this workshop out in town. It was night 1, we had to turn in our resume. And of course, not knowing how to write a resume, I didn't really have one. So a couple hours before class, I'm like trying to put some stuff on a piece of paper, and I don't know anything that goes on a resume. I don't even know what a resume should look like. So I put some wasted ink on a piece of paper, and we get out to the workshop. It was in the evening. And I was professionally embarrassed to hand over that piece of paper that was supposed to be a resume. And it was, might as well have just been doodles. And I'll never forget, Janice was the lady who ran the program. She took it from me. She looked at it, looked at me, and said, this is why you're here. And it was just like, oh, thank you. Thank you for not like beating me up for failing to have some sort of resume. And that was like my jump start. And so we had 2 nights a week for 4 weeks. And I came back on that second night and I was like, here's my resume, like red ink it, like tear it apart. And I had like 3 or 4 versions of it over and it was butchered. People were tearing that thing up. I was like, great. And I came back the next week and I'd made all the adjustments and improvements. And so like by the 4th and 5th night, it was like, hey, this is really good. Now, of course, I was still trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do, which is a struggle. But I had the concept of what a resume should look like, the things that should be on the resume. I was able to start talking about it. So it was definitely there. And again, for me, it was a nonprofit out in Southern California that clicked for me. I know some people, especially since we've gone through COVID and so many things have been virtual, that have gone and found the program here or there that's taken them there. Some go through TAP, and TAP's all they need. More power to them. And that's something we have to really discuss. Is so many people talk about the transition and so many people struggle. We got to talk about the flip side. There are so many transitioning service members that get out and are very successful right off the bat and don't have these struggles. So we have to make sure we tell that story along with the story of struggles. Because right now people are like, why does everybody get out and struggles? We don't. There's that percentage of us that do. But for the most part, and I'd probably say 80-90% get out and have success. And they're out there right away. They figured it out. They're working towards it, whether that's found their job, found college, started their own company, whatever it happens to be. They're very successful and doing amazing things. But there's always those that struggle. And I don't care if you did 2 years and got out or you did 40 years and got out. There's a variety of people that get out and are successful right away, and a variety of people that get out and struggle. And age isn't a factor. Rank isn't a factor. It's different for each and every single one. And some people, they knew they were getting signed a 4-year contract, and at the end of 4 years, I was getting out and I was going to this school and I was doing this, or I was going to work for this company, and they made it work. And there's other of us who get out and we're like, what am I supposed to do with my hands? We have to understand that there is no end all be all for any of us. And it varies. And I've seen people where you just looked and said, that person's going to be successful without question. And they struggle the most. And then you have that, oh yeah, he or she's going to get out and they'll be lucky if they can flip burgers at McDonald's or whatever. And next thing, they're running their own business and they're hiring those senior enlisted, those officers with the MBAs to work for them because they had it together. And so we have to make sure that we talk about all those stories, not just the struggles, because there's so many people that thrive. And I tell people all the time, if you look at a lot of Fortune 500's C-suite, you're going to see a lot of veterans that are in those positions. It's because once we figure it out, we do extremely well. It's just a matter of having to adjust to doing something completely different than we've done our entire lives. As we talk about struggles, and I definitely had my struggles for my first year. Once it clicked for me, and I've been very successful in figuring out who I am, where I belong, and understanding passion, purpose, and thriving in what I do. And for me, it took a year. For some people, it takes a day. Others, it'll take a couple of years. But we have to understand that each will find our place at our time.
That's really amazing wisdom I like what you said earlier and what you just said now, which is there's no standard definition of success for your transition. I think that is a message everyone needs to hear, especially in the land of social media, because you see everyone else's success and then you try and emulate and that might not necessarily be your path. And people really do need to hear that it's okay to find a different path than the ones that you see succeed on whatever platform it may be. I think that's incredibly important.
And another one is when we talk about seeing people on these different social media platforms and seeing how successful they are. You got to peek behind the curtain. Are they truly successful? or are they putting up a great front? So again, just because you see someone who's doing really well doesn't mean they actually are. So that's that whole having the conversations that really, as I tell everybody, I don't try to keep up with the Joneses. I don't even know who the Joneses are. Uh, but we have to figure out our path. And as you figure out your path, what is it that you're going to do to set yourself up for success? What goals are you putting out there that are realistic and attainable? And understand, here's that short-term goal, here's that medium, here's that long. And we have to push ourselves. We have to say, yes, we're going to, excuse me, we're going to get out of our comfort zone and we're going to reach for it. And some people just will take low risk. Some will take medium, some will take high. I will tell you, veterans and military spouses make incredible entrepreneurs. We love to see something that is missing. We have a product or a service that we know can do well, and we figure it out, and we show up to market. And then all of a sudden, we're mission focused. We don't know how to not succeed. When we get knocked down, we're all about getting back up and figuring out how we can learn from that lesson and then improve from it. And most importantly is when we do that, there's so much collaboration. It's grabbing people up and saying, hey, I made it to here. So my job is to grab people that aren't there yet, bring them to here. And for me, my success is when I bring them to where I'm at, it's my responsibility to slingshot them ahead of me. So I tell people all the time that I work with, that I mentor, that I assist. My success is having people I work with way outdo me. I love to be able to say, I knew them when. And I think we do that in the service as we get those who've just joined the unit, just figuring out what service is, and we take them and we help mold them and we set them up for success. And we have to remember that we were successful doing it in the military. Keep doing it. Like, we can all win. I'm a firm believer in collaboration and not competition. If we collaborate, we can both win. If we compete, well, neither of us are really going to get where we really want to go. I got there a little bit further than you did. Well, in the end, we both lost because neither of us got to where we really wanted to be. But if we could collaborate on things, man, can we take it to that next level?
I love that. I think that I'm glad that you're putting out that message of collaboration, because I fear that some people in the transition space, or just when people get out, they view it as a zero sum game versus everyone, like all a rising tide lifts all ships type of scenario. And I do believe that we should always be willing to help those around us by any means necessary.
Yeah, and you'll see it out there, and we talk about it all the time. When you have conversations with people, we all know within the first 2-3 minutes if someone's being real or if someone's putting up a front. And when people put up a front, we keep it superficial and we don't usually go back and continue a conversation with them. But when people are being real with us, we're like, how can we work together? What can I do for them? What can they do for me? And how can we both propel ourselves? And that's how we're raised in the military. We don't talk about I or me. We talk about the team, or we talk about we. And that's another struggle when we get out, is because we have to stop talking about the team and we, and especially in those interviews and those resumes and putting it out there. We got, this is what I did. This is why you should hire me. And this is what's going on. But we have that collaboration mindset, and we just have to make sure that we don't forget everything that we learned to be successful. So we keep putting those into practice.
I completely agree. Something that you've brought up that I want to ask you about is, you've talked about how there's 45,000 different nonprofits. You talk about getting mentors, how some nonprofits work for some people, some nonprofits work for others. How would you recommend to individuals now to start sifting through all of these resources effectively? Because I think now a veteran getting out almost has this problem where it's like paralysis by choice at this point
Yeah.
versus 20 years ago there was nothing, but now there's like too much. So how does somebody today start working through all of that?
And that's a great point. Before there was nothing. And so you just search for one or two things. And if you could find one or two things, you're like, wow, you found more than most. Now you can go just do a basic Google search for transition resource, and 50 pages later, you're still sifting through them. You can't try to do it all. You'll get brought into the black hole and lost because you try to do them all. A couple of ones that I really love. I'm a firm believer in mentorship. And so there's two programs out there that I absolutely love for mentorship. One's Veterati. That is a free platform where transitioning service members, veterans, military spouses can sign up for a free profile, and they can request a 1-hour conversation with the 1,000+ mentors that are on there, and you pick who you have that conversation with. You request that time. I think it's great for informational interviews. It's great to talk to people who've been there, done it, that are in the industry you think you want to be in, that are doing that job that you think you want to be. They're at a company that you want to work for. They're in a city or a state that is of interest to you. So I love telling people, you go to Veterati first. You have these informational interviews. And as you really figure out, okay, I want to go do X. Great. Now that you figure out X, this is where we go to my other favorite one, which is American Corporate Partners, ACP. You sign up and you get a 1-year mentorship where it's you and one mentor picked for you that is an industry expert. They can tell you the ins, the outs, can make the connections, assist you with what's going on, and really tell you the truth about what that job, that industry is. So both are completely free. Use them in conjunction. And so I tell people today, get on Veterati, start having conversations. One, everybody needs a mentor because none of us know it all. Knowledge is power, and we don't even know what question to ask yet. So hopping on there and having a conversation with somebody and saying, I'm getting out in 6 months, I'm getting out in 12 months, I'm getting out in 3 years, whatever your timeline happens to be, I don't know what I want to do yet. It'll spark a conversation. People will be on there. If you connect with me, whether it's LinkedIn or others, I'm going to send you a list of resources, and it's about 15 of them that I like to call core, that I really enjoy, and they hit a very broad spectrum. And that's going to help you reach out and get a feel for, okay, I like this one, I didn't really like that one. And again, as you start doing it, it helps you figure out where you belong, what's right for you, what's not right for you. And most importantly, if you fail to do any of it, if you fail to act, you're just putting yourself in a bad situation. So having those conversations, getting started. And I can shout out and talk about Act Now Education. I can talk about Syracuse University's Institute for Veteran and Military Families, Onward Opportunity. We talk about certifications. We can go back down there, and again, if you're like, I'm going to get out and I'm going to go to college. Okay, well, don't just go to any college. College is out there will steal your money, and you'll walk away with nothing and be frustrated because your GI Bill is gone. You don't even have a degree, and you're just like, I just wasted that. So have conversations with people. I figured out what my path was going to be. That I was going to do HR while in. So I went and got my degrees while in service in HR. And then I had those first conversations on ACP, and I was like, oh my goodness, like this guy's telling me everything I don't want to do in HR. But then we talked about HR being this big, and we narrowed it down to that's couple type of roles in HR that spoke to me. We talk about everyone wants to be in IT or everyone wants in cyber. That's great. There's a million different jobs. Which ones do you really want to be at? Just like everybody wants to be a project management. I'm going to be a project manager. Okay. And what? In IT, logistics, medical. People like, I'm going to be a project manager. You're like, what is that? I manage projects. You're like, but what? And I love Project Management Institute. Worked for them for a little bit. Great company. it's a great thing, but you have to understand what that is. And a lot of people are like, well, that's what we did in the military. To a point, you did, but you didn't go all in. So there's other things to do. Just like the two things that everybody's told is when you get out, you can be a project manager and operations manager, but no one defines those for you. So people just go out there. As I was told, I could be an operations manager. What is that? Manages operations. Like you doing surgery. What kind of operations are we talking? And those are those things that people don't drill down and have the conversations necessary to really learn it. So as we talk about it, conversations matter. Have as many of them as possible. And just because you heard from one person, well, that one person might not have been the best person for you. Have those conversations with 3 or 4 people and see what starts to stick, see what keeps coming back up. I've got people on Veterati where I'm like, oh, you want to be a project manager? I know who I'm going to refer you to talk to, because in 15 minutes, you're either going to be all in or all out. And people joke. I'm like, no, like, one of my Marine brothers, he's going to give it to you straight. And you're either going to be like, I can't wait to do this. Or you're going to be like, I wanted to hang up the phone and run away and cry, because it was like, it burst my bubble. But these are those things that we have to do. We have to have conversations. We have to go down the rabbit hole and figure out what's right for us. And I'll tell you, I was in San Diego. Living in San Diego, that cost of living is really high. The salary requirements and the expectations were much higher for me. When I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, it was a 40% drop in cost of living. It was a very high on our reasons for moving here. That I have to make X amount was greatly reduced. So when people start talking about that, those are things that people have to look at. I want to make 6 figures. Okay, 6 figures in New York is a lot different than 6 figures in Omaha, Nebraska. In New York, you can make 6 figures and still be living in poverty. You can go to Omaha, Nebraska, you make 6 figures, you're living large. So it's understanding these things. People say, I want to go home to my hometown. While you were gone, your hometown changed. There's that saying, you can never go home again, because things change while you're gone. And some people are like, I want to go back to my small town, the one stoplight, the one stop sign, which is great. But how many employment opportunities are there for you? So it's great if you really want to be there, but unless you have remote or you're going to start your own business or something, you have to be paying attention to these. And so many people make decisions in a vacuum, and they don't actually look at all of the different factors that go into it. So I think that's what we have to do, is we have to have conversations. We have to be realistic about what we want to do. And oh, by the way, when we transition, and this is going to be some crazy talk, many of us are married, have significant others. Don't transition by yourself. Don't think you're going to go out there and what I say goes. Yeah, you're going to get laughed at. Make sure you're having conversations with the spouse. Make sure you're having conversations with the kids. Put all those things in there, because it's extremely stressful. And if you think you're stressed, imagine you're the spouse or you're the kids who doesn't have the highest voice, that's not being included in everything, because it's still the military transitioning the service member. We have to get better at the military understanding we're transitioning the family, that everybody's transitioning, not just an individual. So taking those things into consideration will set yourself up for success, reduce your stress. Anytime you can reduce stress in one of the most stressful periods of your life, you should take full advantage of that.
I love that you just called out all of the things that people should be considering when they talk about moving or transitioning, because I think that the military kind of packages all of that. Really, it almost obfuscates all of it behind a PCS, so you don't even have to you don't think about it all, you just go where you're told. And so those are conversations that I have with folks all of the time. Hey, have you thought about the cost of living? One's really interesting, where it's like people are like, yeah, if I go to California I get paid more. So yeah, but it costs more to live there. So are you really making more money? Like that changes things. And I love that you call out those considerations. And I want to dive into the next thing what you just talked about, which is the stress reduction, in a second. But sticking on this topic of things that people don't think about, you mentioned a couple, which is people don't include their family in the decision making, the cost of living in different areas, going back to their hometown and not really considering what the opportunities are in that town. Are there any other large items that you've seen people not consider that you think that you would like to call out in this conversation?
Well, so one of the things that we have to talk about is industry research. When I moved to Jacksonville, Florida, I'm in Florida, so of course I knew healthcare is going to be a top industry. Logistics is huge. I-95 goes north and south. Interstate 10 starts here in Florida, right here in Jacksonville, and runs all the way out to Cali. We've got airports, we've got the sea, we got rail, we've got all of that. You know what I had no idea there was a huge industry here? Financial technology. Jacksonville, Florida is a very large place for financial technology companies. I had no clue about that. So when you're doing your research what areas I want to be X. Okay. What are the top 5, top 10 cities, regions that do that? Because again, come out and say, I want to be a ship captain. You probably don't want to be in Idaho. Hey, I want to be a national park ranger. New York City is not the best place for you to think you're going to do that. So understanding what you want to do, best regions for that. And that takes a lot of understanding of who you are and putting that into play. And I will tell you the 2 biggest questions that we have problem answering as transitioning service, really as humans. Who are we and what do we want to do? Because again, I tell you, I was a sports guy. I was an active duty Marine. That's who I was. Those both got ripped away from me at the same time. All of a sudden you're like, who am I? And then it's okay, what do you want to do? And of course in the military, and you know, I find it funny because in the military, I can do anything. And that's an amazing thing because people are like, oh yeah, I can plug and play you. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. No problem. And we grow where planted. Then we get out and we think when we get out, oh, I've done everything. So you talk to a recruiter and they're like, so Bruce, what do you do? I'm like, I can do anything. And what they hear is, you have no idea what you want to do, and I don't have time to spend helping you figure it out. And so they walk away from you, and you become that, yeah, hand me your resume, I'll put it in the stack, and they'll throw them away on the way out the door. So we have to understand who we are and how it works. And we can say we want to. The military, we are institutionalized. We're very structured. We go where we're told, we do what we're told, we wear what we're told. And all of a sudden, we're like, I can't wait to get out and have all this freedom. And then we get out and we're like, please take some of the freedom back. There's too much of it. You're like, understanding where you are, how to be successful. And that takes time, work, conversations, and self-awareness. And a lot of us don't want to ask ourselves the hard questions. We don't want to put ourselves in the uncomfortable truths of, I'm not really good at that. I did it, but I hated doing it. But I could do it. If you hate doing it, don't do it. And there's those that you have to get a job, keep the lights on, food on the table. But those aren't those things that we thrive to do. Those are things that, okay, I'm going to do this while searching for what I really want. And so many people will, hey, I got a job and I just took it. It'll be a horrible job, but they get so fed up the process that I'm just going to take it. And then they're so afraid to leave it because, well, that process wasn't fun. So they're stuck there. And next thing it's 5-10 years down the road and they're hating life. But it's because they didn't want to put in the work. So we have to put in the work. You get out what you put in.
Yeah, I completely agree. And putting in the work is definitely, it's hard. I definitely think for people it's really scary to ask those questions of who am I? What am I good at? What do I want? And I think that one of the hard ones for people is, especially in the field that I went into, which is cyber, is you're going to make so much money when you get out of the military. And I think for a lot of people, you just go do that because the messaging is more money, better life. And for a lot of people that equation doesn't actually compute, but you just hear that all of the time in cyber. Hey, you're going to make a bajillion dollars when you get out of the military. And so then people just skip over all of that work of who am I? Do I really like this? Do I really want to be doing it? Do I really want to be doing it when it's not attached to service to the nation? So it's just like me doing it for company X. And then no one really wants to walk down that path of what do I want to like? Is this really what I should be doing with my life? Even if that means doing something that might make me less money. And I don't think people like answering those questions.
And one of the things that you made that comment, a trap that many people fall into is in service. We talk about our total compensation, and usually 30-40% of that is non-taxable. So it keeps us in a very lower tax bracket. Then you get out and all of a sudden you're making this six-figure job and you're like, we don't realize it's all taxable. Man, that first year when you get that, you file your taxes and you get that tax bill because you didn't plan properly, when you're like, I'm making all this money and this is great. And all of a sudden you're like, I jumped to maybe 3 tax brackets. I've seen a lot of people get in trouble with that. So that's another thing that we don't preach enough is financial education, financial wellness, and awareness of the different things that we're going to get involved in as we make these leaps from the military world to the post-service employment sector. Other things that, as we're peeling back the onion and saying, hey, you have to understand this and this and this, and all of a sudden people are like, oh my goodness, I'm just going to re-enlist and stay in. No, don't be afraid to get out. All right, if I would have stayed healthy, I would have done my 30 years. I would have loved it. But I love what I'm able to do now. So don't be afraid to get out. The big bad world's not that scary. It just takes planning, awareness, coordination of what's going to happen in what time frame. And as you said, the military made it easy for us. Hey, you've been here for 3 years. Here's your orders. You're going to go from San Diego to North Carolina. You're going to go from this unit to that unit. You went from this job title to that job title. You lived in housing here. You're going to live in housing there. And it was like plug and play, which is great. Until all of a sudden you're like, where do you want to move? And I've seen people move to locations for this wonderful job, and either the job went away, it wasn't a job that they were really interested in, or they got to that location and realized that location was just not anything they wanted to be a part of. And all of a sudden they're trapped because it costs a lot of money to move. And so those are things that people don't think about. They're like, I'm just going to chase the almighty dollar. Okay, again, what is your number one priority? For me, it wasn't money, it was happiness. And people are like, well, if I make a lot of money, I'll be happy. I know a lot of people make a lot of money, they're not happy. I'll tell you, one of the things when I got out, I did not want to be answering my phone at 2, 3 a.m. I didn't want to work 18-hour days. I didn't want the stress of the world. I wanted to be able to breathe, relax, and if I want to take a day off, I can take a day off without stressing of, am I going to lose my job about it? Is everything going to fall apart? So all these things go into play. But again, we don't know until we start having conversations, until we get real with ourselves about what it is who we are, what we want to do, and then developing a plan on how to get there. So have those conversations. Find the smart people that have gone through the process. Ask them questions. And don't just ask one. Ask 5 or 6. Because somebody's going to tell you, I got out and had 6-figure jobs thrown at me. That's not the norm. People come out and tell you, I struggled for 5 years to find where I really belonged. That's not the norm either. But those are the extremes. So it's good to have those extremes and know that they exist. But finding out what is the norm, how can I be successful as quickly as possible, and how can I understand where I belong, what I want to do. So it's rewarding, but it takes work.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I'm glad that we can have conversations like this for people to listen to so that they know that there is a reward at the end of the work. Because I think that people want the work to be easy and the reward to be good, and they're not ready for the work to be hard with a reward at the end, which is funny because we're in the military and we literally do stuff like we like did all that all the time. So I don't understand why it is a thing, but it shouldn't be. The next thing that I really want to talk to you about is we've talked it's come up a couple of times, but the either you felt stress, anxiety, fear, we recognize that other people feel those things as well. It's something that I've had to deal with. In Bruce's opinion, what are the best ways to deal with those emotions as they come up in what you've said, one of the most tumultuous times in your life?
I'm the Marine who didn't have emotions. I just ate them all up, and was my wife called me emotionally constipated because I'd show no emotions. Because showing emotion is weakness. We were told that we don't do that, and I'd been back from Afghanistan for a little bit, and one day my wife looked at me and said, "I don't know what's going on, but you need to go talk to somebody because you're not you." And I realized that Neela is that one person that I can not afford to lose. She's my rock. She's the one who keeps everything together. So that next morning, I self-reported to Camp Pendleton Naval Hospital Mental Health Department. So there I am, Marine Corps Master Sergeant in uniform, checked in to get a mental health counselor to have conversations. Talk about a very surreal. Everybody's looking at you like, oh, someone's in trouble because the Master Sergeant's here. And I just looked at him and said, no, I have issues too. I'm here to talk because I need to talk to somebody about what I got going on. And people in the waiting room were like, oh, it's not just the E4s and below, it's all of us. And then I got assigned a counselor. Let me tell you, it was the worst match you could ever imagine. Like, I'm in there, I'm like, no, this is not the right person for me. I went to the vet center out in town. And a lot of people don't understand that vet centers are there and they have people that you can talk to. And we had some conversations. So it was better than what I had on base, but it still wasn't clicking for me to find that right person. But I kept having the conversations. I kept going back. And that's rough because it takes a lot to admit you need to talk to somebody, then to go talk and have it not work out. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm not going to do that again because it was painful. Then you go do it again, it doesn't work out. And so to keep going back and knowing that you have to figure this out, it takes a lot of strength. And I went through, and when I got into the VA wanted to talk about, okay, let's talk about your incident. Because it's always about, let's talk about that one thing that happened. And I'm like, I didn't have one thing. I didn't get blown up. I didn't have X, Y, or Z. It was years of all this that just added up. And they try to put you in this program and that program. So what I've found for Bruce, and it's different for each of us, just like everything, we all have what works for us, what doesn't. Telling my story is extremely empowering. Not only because I'm able to get it out, but I know by me telling my story, someone's going to hear it and someone's going to be like, that sounds like what I'm going through. Or if he can say it, why can't I say it? I love peer groups, being around people that understand who you are, similar background, that can speak the language. That makes it easier than going to somebody who doesn't understand you. And so you're like, I'm having these issues and I don't want to have to break these things down to the ABCs to explain scenarios, language, what is normal for us, to someone who has no clue. And then if we don't have that connection, we check out. If someone's just, oh, that's nice, and how'd that make you feel? That makes me feel like I'm going to get up and walk out of here. So figure out what works for you. When we leave service, we lose our tribe. We lose this sense of camaraderie, the brother and the sisterhood that we had day in, day out. And we got to replace it. If you don't replace it, that's a huge void. when I first got to Jacksonville, like I said, we moved here, didn't know anyone. I connected with the Mission Continues platoon here. Amazing nonprofit. It's not just for military, but there's a lot of military members a part of it. We're projects headquartered right here in Jacksonville. Team Rubicon, Team Red, White, and Blue. And we can start going down this list of all these different groups where it's about camaraderie. And each of them, Mission Continues is community service. Team Red, White, and Blue is physical fitness. Team Rubicon is going out there in service to others, especially when someone's having the worst day of their life. You're out there helping them. And you go back forth and you find, where do you fit? What's that connection you need? So I tell people, find your tribe, find how talking about your mental health works for you. Some people aren't going to come on a podcast and tell you, hey, I didn't leave my house because my PTSD, my depression, my anxiety. We don't talk about imposter syndrome. We don't talk about all these things that will eat away at us. The problem is if you don't talk about them, they will eat away at you. And I'll tell you, for me, it was 2 months of me not leaving my house, which was really deep, dark. And if that went 3 months, maybe I'm somewhere completely different right now. And I'm lucky enough that Neela and I have known each other for over 30 years, and we can call each other on our crap. It wasn't like, oh, she's going to hurt my feelings by saying this. It was like, no, this is the reality that we need to have. And I wish and hope that everybody has that somebody. And I know not everybody does, because it's not normal to be that vulnerable with a person. But having that somebody, whether it's mom, dad, brother, sister, spouse, buddy, whoever happens to be, but just having that somebody that can call you on your crap and not worry about losing a friendship or care so much about you that they'll call you on it. And if it costs a friendship, so be it, but you're still here. And I think those are conversations that we have to have. And I tell people there's probably 1 or 2 days a week I just want to curl up in a ball and bawl my eyes out, not talk to anybody. But we push through. We don't let it overwhelm us. Now, are there days where I take a mental health day and I just clear my schedule? Absolutely. But we have to figure out what works for each of us. Because again, just like we talked, just because something works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you, and vice versa. And sometimes we don't know what's going on, and we just have to talk to somebody and say, I just don't feel right. And we go through those conversations and the processing. And we've got the 988 number. If there's suicidal thoughts, there's emergency rooms. There's so many ways to get help. But you have to be willing to be vulnerable enough to say, I'm not well and I need assistance. And that takes a lot of strength for someone to admit, because we're all alpha males and alpha females, and personalities are like, we don't need help. We're the ones who help. And those mindsets that mess with us, we have to get past those things.
That goes back to rebuilding what you talked about, which is figuring out who you are after the military, refactoring that identity, so to speak. And I do think that one piece of that is deciding what to leave behind in your last chapter, like the last chapter of your life, and what you're going to bring forward into this next chapter of your life. And so one question I want to ask you next is, you talked about how the Marines were your identity and then being athletic was your identity. And so for you, especially around that athleticism piece, what did you find later in your life to round yourself out from like a hobbies perspective, or to divest yourself into other things that entertain you, or just to round yourself out from just, I work and then I don't? What did that journey look like for you outside of collecting Funko Pops? So
I'm still in the middle of that journey. For the longest time, I would just throw myself into work. I wake up in the morning, I start working. I'd work until I went to bed at night. I allowed my injuries to be my excuse not to work on my physical fitness. I'd work on mental. I wouldn't do the physical. And so I'll be honest, I hopped on a scale one day and it was way higher than it had ever been before in my life. And I said, enough's enough. I started getting up and taking my dogs for a walk. I had a horrible cherry Coke addiction where that's all I would drink all day from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. And putting that much garbage in your system is not healthy. And so I quit it cold turkey. I started drinking water. I started walking 2 to 6 miles every single day. I went to some different programs with Weir Project, with YMCA, to put myself out there and get back on a healthy track. So I'm in the process of that. That's all been going on here the last 4 or 5 months. And I've had some setbacks because, again, you can't go from 7 or 8 years of just not doing anything to trying to hop back in and not. And of course, we all do what we do is if I can do 4, then 5 would be better. And then next thing you know, you're doing 8 and you're like, okay, you hurt yourself. Yeah. And so as we're going back through and we're doing that, it's figuring that out. What is the mix? What is the blend? So those are things that I'm still in the mix of, but we've got to talk mental and physical health on the same page because they go together. You can't have one at 100 and one at 0. It's just not going to work. And whether that's 100% physical and 0% mental or 100% mental and 0 physical, the math is not going to be there for you. So you have to work on both, and being physically active will help your mental health. It'll get things moving around. You'll feel better about yourself. So we have to continue to be well-rounded and work on all aspects of us.
I think that's great. And I agree. I think that there needs to be a balance of mental work and mental, emotional, and physical work as people move through this transition. One piece that I am interested in to ask you, as someone who exists in the hiring space, you've come a long way from getting your resume worked on to now someone who works in hiring. How do you think that veterans can bridge the communication gap between what they know and how they talk and the rest of the world? And how does a veteran learn how to communicate skills, accomplishments, achievements in a way that is befitting of what they've done, but also is understandable and digestible by people who may not have experience with the military?
So expand your circle to include people who have no idea of what we do in the military. Too many of us are afraid to talk to people who don't have that same background. Well, understand 95% of the people that are going to make hiring decisions on us have never served, don't know anyone who served, to a level of being able to interact. They don't speak our language. They don't understand the words coming out of our mouths. So if you only talk to people that have served, you're going to get answers that aren't right. So find mentors, have conversations with people that are hiring managers that work in HR that are in the industries you have but have not served. And again, you will find that there's all kinds of different pockets out there, people who never served that want to serve, that want to do their part by giving back to others and helping you, whether that's mentorship, whether that's going out and finding a chapter for the industry or the profession that you want to be a part of. Go out there and join it. Push yourself out of your comfort zone and talk to people that have a different background than you. Listen to what they have to say. Be vulnerable enough to admit, hey, I'm lost. I don't know what's going on. I have an interest in this. And start talking about it. And a lot of companies, especially those companies that are really big on wanting to hire military veteran, military spouses, have employment resource groups. And they usually have that veteran, military spouse who's a part of it that can translate our skill sets, our resumes. I've had HR professionals that say they have the skills, but I can't understand what's in there. And when they're willing to reach out, it tells me that they really want to work and hire, but they're going out of their way to get answers. And a lot aren't going to do that. So learning how to translate our skills, our titles, the terms that we use. And again, we talk about, go back to project management. In service, we do a lot of project management, but we don't understand the terminology as it applies to getting our PMP certification, how it applies in different industries. So it's not that we can't do the job or we don't have the skills. We're just very bad at translating and communicating the knowledge, skills, and abilities that we do have into a non-military language. So we have to work on those barriers. So again, having conversations with people that have different backgrounds than yourself. And I know so many people are like, I don't want to network. I'm afraid of networking. And I always tell people when they say that, I said, hey, did you have that person in admin that you could call when you need something, and supply and logistics and motor T? And yeah, of course. That's called networking. We just don't call it that in the military. So when we get out, all of a sudden we're afraid of networking, realizing that we're really good at networking. We've done this entire careers. So it's having those conversations and translating those things. Oh, that's what that is. Yes, you've been doing it and you're really good at it. You just have to change your terminology.
I agree. I think it is funny that there are a lot of parallels in what people in the military do to the regular world. We just don't, for whatever reason, we don't know that. And so then we just assume we have no applicable skills outside of the military, when in reality, there are a lot of crossovers if you take the time to talk to people and actually learn what those crossovers and all of those things are.
And that's the
Okay.
big key right there. Take the time to learn and realize it. And so many of us were on that instant gratification, the go, that we're afraid to take that pause, take that deep breath, and let things actually play out. So that's something we have to understand, is transition happens, on its own time schedule, not on the time schedule we want it to happen.
Yeah, and that was one thing I really struggled with. Was I was 4 months out of the military, and I was like, why haven't I figured this out yet? which is such a horrible way of looking at it, but I just had no grace with myself because I was so used to being someone who knew what was happening in the military, and going back into a world or a situation where I didn't was hard. And that was something that I did not deal with very well for the first year of my transition, for sure. One thing that I want to ask you about networking, though, I do believe that, especially on LinkedIn, reaching out to people, talking to folks on Veterati, there are some nuances that are new from a networking perspective. Do you have any broad advice that you would give individuals that are about to start on this transition journey on how they can be successful in reaching out to folks and finding those mentors and performing those networking things?
So first and foremost, don't say, hey, what job do you have for me? Don't reach out and your first thing is an ask. Don't give that person a sales pitch. As we talk about professional introduction and kind of who are you and what are you looking for, understand that networking is not the number of connections you have on LinkedIn or other platforms, but the quality of those connections. So when you reach out to somebody, it could, and if you're on LinkedIn, I always recommend you send a personalized note. And I don't need you to use every character possible, but you'll reach out, Bruce, I saw you on the podcast, or I saw you had an article, or you posted about X, Y, or Z. Really interested in it. I was wondering if we can connect and have a conversation. Okay, you're going to get me to accept that much quicker than if you just hit the easy button and said, let's connect. I'm like, because if you just hit the e-biz and connect, I got to look at you. Who are you? Why are you reaching out? Are you someone that's going to have value to my network? because if you're just a number, I don't need numbers. I'm looking for quality value added. But if you send me something like that, I'm like, oh, great. Let me assist you. Let me do my part and pay it forward. Again, Veterati, American Corp Partners, going out to local chapters that correspond to the industry profession you want to be a part of. All those are great ways to be around it. Uh, Depending on where you're at, Eventbrite has all kinds of different events that are out there. Here in Jacksonville, Florida, we've got multiple networking events where it's bringing military veteran, military spouse community together, sometimes in our own bubble. Other times it's open to all with a good sprinkling of our military veteran community. So it's slowly breaking the ice of getting us in there. But develop a strategy, have a plan. Don't be the person who submits the same 50 resumes to 50 different jobs and pray that someone calls and offers you a job. Don't be that person. Come up and say, this is what I'm looking to do. Hey, I see that you went to this school. Hey, I see we're both Marines. I see we both were soldiers, sailors, airmen, whatever it happens to be. What is that connection? And build that way. And don't send me or anyone else your resume without being asked for it. As you connect, you're like, hey, I'm struggling with my resume. I was wondering if you'd mind giving it a look. And most times we're going to say yes. Even though I despise resumes, if you're like, hey, you look at my resume, I'm like, oh, yes, send it to me. But again, if you send your resume to 100 people, you're going to get 100 responses. Find those ways. Don't jump in with an ask right away, because you're going to turn people off and people are just not going to respond to you. So, don't ask for a job right away. Don't send unsolicited resumes. Don't be demanding. Remember, you have the ask. I don't have an ask for you. Be respectful of my time, what I can help you with. And if you're doing that with courtesy, you're going to go a lot further than if you think that someone owes you something. Because I just got to put it out there for all of my service members and veterans. We signed a contract. We got paid for our time in service. And once we got out, no one owes us anything. So if you have that mentality, you got to check yourself before you go down a rabbit hole. It's probably not going to be healthy for you. Be prepared, be ready, be proud of what we've done, but understand that there's limits to what anyone owes us. And reputation goes a long way. And I'll especially tell you, um, you're going to find, just like in military, that there are small pockets of community and people know each other. It's the same thing when you go out there and you're in X town or X industry. The circles are small and people know each other. And the joke will be like, oh my God, let me tell you the story of what this person did. And your name will get out there. So you want to avoid things like that.
Yeah.
If anyone ever tells you it's easy, it's not. If it was easy, we wouldn't have so many programs. We wouldn't have so many conversations. So you have to develop a plan. Starting as early as possible is a key factor to success. If you think you're going to wait till your last 6 months and just do it all in that timeline, you're setting yourself up for failure. And if you try to do it in a vacuum where you have all the answers, you're probably not going to be successful, at least not right off the bat. Don't be afraid to have conversations with people from different backgrounds, different industries. And you might be somebody like me. I was 42 years old when I transitioned. I talked to people in their 20s and gave me amazing insights. I talked to people in their 60s that gave me amazing insights. Don't think that because you were X that you can't learn from everyone else. We all have different backgrounds, experiences, and if we act like we know it all, you're setting yourself up for failure. So it'll be out there, and probably the biggest thing that we didn't mention yet. Every transitioning service member needs to do their VA disability claim. Do not pay somebody to do your VA disability claim. There are predators out there that will steal your compensation and your benefits. You can go look at a list of certified veteran service organizations that are accredited and have been trained and meet the standard, and they will do it for absolutely free. Now, with that being said, you also need to treat your VSO the same way you would a financial advisor. Interview them. If you don't have that warm and fuzzy, you should not be getting into a business relationship with them. And whether people want to say it's a business relationship or not, your VA disability claim is going to unlock compensation and benefits for the rest of your life for you and your family. If you don't feel that they're competent and trustworthy enough, you should not be dealing with them. So you move on from one to the other. Personally, I went through 3 of them. Didn't use any of them. I ended up filing it myself. Do not do that. I was broken enough that it worked out. But I went through the process completely uneducated and unaware of any of it. I had some really ugly compensation and pension exams that, because I just had so many things that were wrong with me, because, again, my surgery count was so high that it equaled where I was. But someone really sat me down and explained the process, talked about what things were claimable and what things weren't. I still am learning more and more. So do it as you're transitioning. If you can do it at your 6 months out and do a benefits delivered at discharge, please do it. It makes it so much simpler for you. But that also means that you have to start telling people that you're broken and getting seen by medical and not waiting because, I want to be deployable. I want to be this. I want to be that. At some point, you've got to wave that flag. My time in service is ending. I got to be honest about the things that are broken with me. And that doesn't mean you go make a bunch of stuff up, but being honest to yourself and to medical and getting those things addressed. So those are some of the things that I think we hadn't touched on yet and are very important to make sure that we're taking care of the entire service member on the way out the door.
I completely agree. And I love that you're calling out the VA, getting the VA done before you get out, because I'll tell anyone who's listening, it is way harder to do it once you're out than once you went then in that time that you right before you leave. Do your research, show up to those appointments informed, and it'll go much smoother for you than having to submit a bunch of claims on the back end, because I've seen people do that process and it's tough, and I do not wish that on anybody. So I completely agree with that. Last question. What is the final piece of advice or final piece of wisdom that you want to leave the listeners with?
Oh, put me on the spot, won't you?
Mm-hmm.
Not be honest with yourself. Learn who you are. Invest in yourself. And if that means you've got to take a month to decompress or a couple months to decompress, figure out how you can do that. Because we've done amazing, great things with our time in uniform. And it is a process to go from uniform for 4 or 40 years to non-uniform. And we're about to do things that we've never been a part of. So give yourself grace. learning to come to peace with what you can control and what you can't control goes a long way to that. So when you have those days where you're just fed up and nothing's going wrong, find a spot to take a deep breath and get away from it. When you have those days where everything's going wrong, enjoy them. They're magical, but they don't happen all the time. Learn who you are, give yourself grace, and remember, you're never more than a phone call away from somebody that can assist you.
I think that's wonderful advice to end on. Bruce, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to everybody today. I am very grateful that you have decided to come on to the show to be vulnerable, to talk about your story, and to give such amazing wisdom and advice to those who are about to start their transition and also people who already have. I think, like you said, not everyone's going to come onto a podcast and talk about the fact that, like, the things that have happened in their life. And so I'm very grateful that you decided to. From me and everyone else who's going to listen to this, thank you so much for being here.
No, Billy, I appreciate the opportunity. And like I said, one of the things that empowers me is the ability to tell my story and let people know that it's okay to be open and honest and vulnerable, because someone needs to hear it. And if I can help one person, then my purpose has been served.
That's
so
awesome.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I'm really happy that you took me up on the offer. Where, if people want to reach out, where can they find you?
Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn. Pretty simple. Just do Bruce Thompson, MBA, Mike Bravo Alpha. Look for the guy with the beard. And of course, talentsascend.com. So talents with an S, ascend.com.
Awesome. Those will be linked in the description of this video. If you want to reach out, check those out. But that is the end of the episode. Thank you so much for everyone who made it this far with us. You are the reason why we do this, why we put these videos together. And if you like what you heard, I'd encourage you to check out the other episodes we have on the show. And also, liking this video, sharing it with people who need to hear this message is always appreciated. But that is the end of the show, and we will catch you on the next episode of the Post Military Podcast. Peace.